All right, in this explainer, we are going to break down a simple framework that can honestly change the way you communicate. I mean, it applies to talks with your partner, your coworkers, and, as we're going to see, even in a super high-stakes jury room. Let's get right into it. So we have all been here. Your partner comes home, starts telling you about a problem at work, and you immediately jump in with, okay, here's what you should do. But instead of a thank you, you get the cold shoulder. And you're left wondering, what just went wrong? Well, you thought you were helping, but it turns out you were having two completely different conversations at the same time.
And this really gets to the core of it. See, one person is in a practical, problem-solving mode, while the other is in a totally emotional, feeling-based mode. It's kind of like one of you is trying to build a bridge, while the other is just describing the river. The end result is a total disconnect.
So what is really going on here? Well, it turns out that almost every single conversation we have is actually a mix of three different types of talks all happening at once, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, so first up, you've got the practical conversation. This is the "what's this about" talk. It's all about making decisions, figuring out plans, solving problems. The second is the emotional conversation. How do we feel? This one is just about sharing and understanding feelings. And the third one is the social conversation, which asks, who are we? This is all about our relationships, our identities, and how we see each other.
Now here's something that might surprise you. You'd think we spend most of our time in those practical, problem-solving talks, right? But the research shows that a staggering 70% of our conversations are actually social. They're about figuring out our relationships and our place in the world.
And that brings us to the single most important rule for becoming a better communicator. Before you do anything else, you absolutely have to figure out which of these three conversations is really happening.
So the key is this. Before you jump in with your brilliant idea or your own feelings, just pause and listen. What is the other person truly looking for here? A plan, some empathy, or just connection?
Let's look at this in action with a really simple but incredibly powerful example from a school that actually trained its teachers in this exact method.
So instead of trying to guess why a student was frustrated or acting out, teachers were taught to ask this one simple, direct question. And it's a total game changer because it completely stops the guesswork. It just asks.
And look how perfectly each option maps onto one of the three conversations. Do you need help? That's practical. Do you need a hug? That's emotional. And do you need for me to listen? That's social. It's about making that person feel seen and valued. This lets the teacher instantly meet the student's actual need.
Okay, so now let's scale this up. Let's see how this framework applies in a much more complex, high-stakes situation, a deadlocked jury room back in 1985.
So the defendant was a man named Leroy Reed. He was a former felon, but for 9 years he'd been a model citizen. Then things get a little weird. He enrolls in a mail-order detective course that tells him he needs to buy a gun. So he does. He locks it away, never touches it, but he gets arrested for illegal possession because of his record.
The jury was completely stuck. You had one group having a purely practical conversation. Hey, the law is the law, he broke it, guilty. But the other group, they were having an emotional and social conversation. This isn't fair. He clearly had no bad intent. Who are we as people if we punish this man? They were just talking right past each other. Into this mess steps our hero, a juror named Boley. Now, he's a writer, so he gets communication. And what's his first move? He doesn't argue. He doesn't state his own opinion. He just listens and lets everyone else show him what kind of conversation they're trying to have. So Botley starts by acknowledging the moral and emotional points people are making, but he quickly zeroes in on the final holdout, a guy named Carl, who seems to be stuck in a purely practical, logical mindset. And once he sees that, Botley completely changes his approach to match Carl's way of thinking. He stops talking about fairness or what was in Reed's heart. Instead, he presents this cold, hard, cost-benefit analysis. He frames the whole decision in Carl's language, logic, and efficiency. He asks, is prosecuting Leroy Reed the most effective use of taxpayer money if our goal is public safety? And that question, that's what finally connects with Carl on his level.
What Boley did right there is a masterclass in a technique called matching, and it is absolutely the key to unlocking these kinds of difficult conversations.
Matching is really the art of figuring out what kind of conversation someone else needs to have and then meeting them right there. And this isn't about manipulation, not at all. It's about genuine connection. You're speaking their language so you can actually finally be heard.
So how can you take this out of that jury room and bring it into your own life, like right now?
Here's the big takeaway. The next time you're in a conversation, before you say a single word, just listen. Try to hear what's hiding underneath the surface. Is this person looking for a solution, for some empathy, or just for a connection? Identifying that hidden layer, that's the first and honestly the most important step to having a conversation that truly, truly matters.